Vladimir Putin says Africa is a cemetery for Africans. When an African becomes rich, his bank accounts are in Switzerland. He travels to France for medical treatment. He invests in Germany. He buys from Dubai. He consumes Chinese. He prays in Rome or Mecca. His children study in Europe. He travels to Canada, USA, and Europe for tourism. If he dies, he will be buried in his native country. Africa is just a cemetery for Africans. How could a cemetery be developed?
I think one of the realizations that we are coming to right now is that the president did not understand the seriousness of the protests that we had in Kenya recently. He has not internalized the plight of Kenyans, and he has not internalized the issues that Kenyans are facing. He still insists on taxing a population that does not have the capacity to pay more than it's already paying. As we speak now, he has now appointed a government that is calling a government of national unity, a government that has included some representatives from the opposition, including the person who's currently sitting on the seat of the cabinet secretary for treasury. Unfortunately, he has not come with any creative ideas. He has not come with anything new, and he's reverting back to the policies that were scrapped. This gentleman was in parliament and he voted against the finance bill. So one of the questions Kenyans are asking themselves is what has now changed because he's now sitting in that seat in treasury to begin with. Was he just playing politics when he was in parliament? Was he just playing to the gallery when he was in parliament? We also know that the president thinks that at this point he has consolidated power, so he can practically, dismiss Gen Z and show them that there's nothing they can do in this country. But that's going to be one very big mistake by this government and by the president, because I don't think he understands the agency around which Kenyans have decided they will suffer no more.
Good morning, Africans. I hope where you are doing fine. And if you're not doing fine, please do fine. It's always good to be fine. Yeah. For this reason, I want us to talk about a different class of people. We have them everywhere. You can teach them everything that's there to be taught, but they just never listen. These guys, they think they know it all. You can show them examples. They still don't have. We also have friends such as those. And my advice is always, if you have friends such as those, it's always best to keep distance from them, And such friends are like William Ruto. William Ruto has decided he's going to bring back the taxes. Yeah, those taxes which cost the lives of more than 100 people. That is what I know. So Ruto has decided he's going to bring back these specific taxes. He's going to bring actually more than 40 back. And one of them is the diapers. One of them is the electronics. He's going to make purchase of electronics very, very expensive in the not so far future. Now Africans are, what can we do about this? What can we say? We don't have a voice right now, but do we really don't have a voice as Africans? That is what I want us to find out. I want us to watch this video, and then by the end of the video, I shall give you my thoughts, where we shall also have a deep critical analysis about this video. So let's dive in.
Hello and welcome. We begin with the big focus on Kenya. The East African nation is once again on the brink of chaos and mayhem. Tensions are simmering in Kenya once again as the William Ruto government plans to reinstate some of the scrapped controversial taxes. In a television interview, Kenya's Finance Minister John Mbadi said the government is considering reinstating about 49 tax measures. These include the reintroduction of an eco-levy, which will increase prices of electronic items, diapers and other goods. The finance minister insisted that unlike the initial proposal, this one will exclude sanitary pads. The government says the measure is aimed at reducing waste. More importantly, it says bringing back the scrap tax measures will help the debt-ridden Kenyan government raise about $1.2 billion. The government says these measures were needed to pay for expenditure, including wages for teachers. The government also aims to collect more taxes by extending the tax amnesty period by 6 months. Now, after the announcement, protest groups in Kenya say they are ready to hit the streets again. In June, deadly protests and violence plunged Kenya into anarchy. Protesters even stormed into the country's parliament. At least 50 people were killed and thousands were injured in the countrywide protests. These protests forced William Ruto to abandon the finance bill that proposed new taxes and hikes to raise over $2 billion. Bowing to pressure, the president was even forced to dismiss most of the cabinet. The protesters said the proposed tax hikes would pile on pressure on the citizens who are already struggling with skyrocketing cost of living. The Kenyan government is stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand is the competing demands of the citizens to reduce the financial burden. On the other are lenders such as the International Monetary Fund who are urging Kenyan government to cut deficits to obtain more financing. After scrapping the contentious finance bill, the Ruto government reassessed the budget to explore alternative revenue sources. It cut government spending, but the fiscal deficit widened further. Global ratings agencies such as Moody's and Fitch downgraded Kenya's rating over concerns about the government's ability to service its debt. Kenya's public debt ratio almost doubled from 41% of the GDP in 2014 to a projected 78% of GDP in 2024. The government says its hands are tied as the country struggles to repay its huge debt burden. Kenya's domestic and foreign debt was a staggering $80 billion last year. So President William Ruto and his cabinet are at a fork in the road, and any decision they make is likely to have direct implications on the economy and peace in Kenya. Now, for more on this, we have with us Stella Agara, governance and security analyst and a tax justice activist. She joins us live from Nairobi. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what led to President Ruto's decision to reintroduce the scrap tax measures? What alternatives were considered before deciding to bring back these tax measures?
I think one of the realizations that we are coming to right now is that the president did not understand the seriousness of the protests that we had in Kenya recently. He has not internalized the plight of Kenyans, and he has not internalized the issues that Kenyans are facing. He still insists on taxing a population that does not have the capacity to pay more than it's already paying. As we speak now, he has now appointed a government that is calling a government of national unity, a government that has included some representatives from the opposition, including the person who's currently sitting on the seat of the cabinet secretary for treasury. Unfortunately, he has not come with any creative ideas. He has not come with anything new, and he's reverting back to the policies that were scrapped. This gentleman was in parliament and he voted against the finance bill. So one of the questions Kenyans are asking themselves is what has now changed because he's now sitting in that seat in treasury to begin with. Was he just playing politics when he was in parliament? Was he just playing to the gallery when he was in parliament? We also know that the president thinks that at this point he has consolidated power, so he can practically, dismiss Gen Z and show them that there's nothing they can do in this country. But that's going to be one very big mistake by this government and by the president, because I don't think he understands the agency around which Kenyans have decided they will suffer no more.
And Stella, exploring the potential effects on businesses, households and government revenue, how will these reinstated taxes impact the Kenyan economy and, of course, its citizens?
I think, first of all, for example, if we talk about the glaring eco levy tax, It targets imported goods. It targets goods coming from sources that are outside of the Kenyan market. One of the issues that the government should have considered when making this decision is the fact that Kenya depends heavily on imports, an error that exists because of the policies that have been made over time by the government that did not allow industry to thrive and eventually caused Kenya to be heavily dependent on imports. So if you impose an equal levy tax on everything that is coming from outside the country, you're basically saying that this tax is still going to be transferred to the citizens. The Kenyan population is also a huge consumer economy, and so they're going to be buying heavily from the things that are coming from foreign markets, and then these are going to be subjected to tax. The sanitary towels were one area, and if you remove the sanitary towels, there are many other essential goods that we import and use as a country that are going to have this equal levy imposed upon them, which still means that the burden is still coming back to the Kenyan. Unfortunately, this is happening at a time when more corruption cases have been exposed in this government. There's a gentleman called Morara Kebaso who single-handedly been showing us some of the projects that the government has been neglecting or has claimed to have invested resources in that have not been completed. Where has that money gone to? How can that money be recovered and be invested into the economy before they come back into the pockets of Kenyan citizens? The state has also decided to be very irresponsible about how they care for the lowest people in our society. And so these taxes are going to be imposed to that consumer, to the person who needs these goods the most. Unfortunately, this is not going to work for our economy.
Right. And Stella, what steps will the government take to address the public concerns and also the potential protests, considering the previous outcry and those devastating protests in June?
One of the steps that they must take is engaging in public participation, and there were some of the petitions that were in court and litigation that was in court just before the rejection of the finance bill were about the procedure that was used to even bring the finance bill to parliament. In the Constitution of Kenya and the laws of Kenya require that there be public participation. That they considered input from the citizens, and if they reject or ignore any of the input from the citizens, then they are required to explain why they have rejected some of the input from the citizens. Unfortunately, the process previously had not met this threshold. If they are going to embark on this process, then they will be required to ensure that the process is above par. The second is that they will have to contend with the fact that the same citizens they are going to are the ones who say they do not want this finance bill. They have been unequivocal about the fact that they will not listen to any conversation about the finance bill. And so they'll also need to do a bit of convincing and persuasion to convince Kenyans that this is what makes sense, alongside convincing them that these are the only measures, aside from the issues of corruption that have been seen in the country. The last thing that I guess they would have to do is to seriously pay attention to the voices of Kenyans and ensure that then they're also monitoring what other arms of government are doing. Today, the Supreme Court of Kenya has suspended the ban on some of those taxes, which means the government can continue taxing even as they wait for the process in court to be completed. Kenyans are not happy about this. If you check some of their feedback already, they're very unhappy about this. They're very unhappy about the conduct of the courts concerning this. This is fueling a lot of negative energy amongst the citizens in a country that is already in a very volatile state. And so they'll have to exercise a lot of precaution to ensure that they maintain the fabric of our nation, even as they embark on this process of trying to get taxes. But then they'll also have to engage in a final assignment of ensuring that then we reconsider completely our borrowings. We reconsider what we are spending on. If we do not have sufficient resources to feed Kenyans, we should not be the ones who are planning for all kinds of huge constructions, cement towers that eventually may not necessarily benefit Kenyans who do not have the resources to use them at the end of the day.
Right. Stella, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights on all the latest coming out of Kenya.
Thank you for having me.
I want you to remember what I told you about some friends. Some friends would be there. They're like umbrellas. Huh? You see, when it's raining, you so much need the umbrella. You so much need it. You use it to cover you, to make you not get malaria. You know, sometimes you get fever when you're rained on. Sometimes the umbrella can also act as an insulator. So instead of the thunder and lightning hitting you, the umbrella sacrifices itself for you. Now the thunderstorm hits the umbrella, not you. Yeah, but once the rain is over and the sun has shown up, where do you take the umbrella? Tell me, where do you take it? You throw it away, right? Yes, you only come and get it when you find it's purposeful. And that is what is happening with this gentleman, John Mbadi. John Mbadi was actually... Remember, in Kenya we have political parties. And these political parties, we have the ruling party and we have the opposition party. The ruling party right now is Kenya Kwanza. And then we have Azimio. Azimio is like a group of political parties. And the heartbeat of this opposition party is a party called ODM, Orange Democratic Movement. They have always come up and they have always talked about freedom. They have always been on the side of the people. You see, they are always there to ensure that the government is punctuated, people are not suffering, people get the best out of the government. This John Mbadi was a member of this opposition party that is always there to ensure that Africans in Kenya are having their rights respected and are having themselves not abused. This guy, the other time when people were still demonstrating, before Ruto dissolved his cabinet, this guy was against the finance bill. This guy called John Mbadi. Let's have a look at these John Mbadi details. So John Mbadi Ngongo is a Kenyan politician. Recently, he was nominated as a Minister of Finance. He belongs to the Orange Democratic Movement and was elected to represent the Gwasi constituency in the National Assembly of Kenya since the 2007 Kenyan parliamentary election. So he was born in Suba District, Education, University of Nairobi, Party, Orange Democratic Movement. Office, he is having the office of the Kenya Cabinet Secretary since 2024. So he was recently elected and nominated as the Minister of Finance. And the Kenyan Finance Bill, of course, it's no rocket science. He has to speak about it. But why again, after one time you say you are not supporting Kenyan tax bill, another time you support the Kenyan tax bill? These are the sort of people who, when it's raining, they shouldn't be given an umbrella. The umbrella should even talk and tell them, get the hell out of my face. Yeah. Because they are ungrateful. You see, they are only there where they want, once their hands are greased or once they sense and they smell money, that is where they go, you know. Now, the Kenyan government will have to bring back some tax measures that it scrapped after a deadly protest in June. The finance minister said, raising the risk of further unrest. John Mbadi made an interview with a popular news channel here in Kenya. It's called Citizen TV. In the interview, he said that some of the measures would be tweaked and not all will be revived, but they were needed to pay for expenditure, including wages for teachers. Some people who were involved in the youth-led protest movement that rocked the East African nation said they were ready to go back to the streets after the minister's announcement. People are ready to go back to the streets. Now, here is something we should consider. The bill had contained new taxes and hikes to raise an extra 346 billion Kenyan shillings. That is US dollar 2.7 billion. The plans that the protesters said would pile pressure on a population already struggling with surging living costs. Mbadi, who was brought into the cabinet from the opposition benches as Ruto tried to pop up his government, had ruled out further taxes during his public remarks in the Post on August 4th. Now, in this special interview on Sunday, actually, this John Mbadi said the government planned to reintroduce what he called an eco-levy on most goods through plans to tax essential products such as sanitary pads, which were already a focal point for the protesters. Anger would be dropped. For eco-levy, we would target those areas that do not affect the common citizen. He told the private broadcaster the measures were needed to fund emerging government expenditures and will be taken into the parliament by September 30th, Mbadi said. The government has been caught up between the competing demands of hard-pressed citizens and lenders such as the International Monetary Fund, which is urging the government to cut off deficits to obtain more financing. After the bill was dropped, the government cut spending and widened the fiscal deficit. Now, this John Mbadi of a guy said that the new moves that the government is trying to reinvent would raise 150 billion shillings. The minister rejected criticism of the levy by businesses operating in Kenya. This country is not a dumping place. If you are injurious to the environment, then you must pay to make good what you have cost in Kenya. This country is not a dumping site. Now, is he trying to hide behind the eco-levy? Or what's his idea? In Kenya, we can't have a company produce cameras. We don't have a company produce laptops. We have actually some laptops. It's called Taifa. But they are not made to the best quality. So these laptops are not made in Kenya. They are made outside. So you want to place this eco-levy on these Kenyans to ensure that the global warming, greenhouse, I find this is not making sense at all. This is just a way of trying to get into people's pockets forcibly. The US dollar actually is going at 128, 126, 127. That is how the US dollar is selling against the Kenyan shilling. So it's still strong. It's very, very strong. We can't have people like John Mbadi come to Africa. One time he's on the other side, another time he's here. Just like Putin said it, Africa is a graveyard. Africa is a cemetery. It's like African leaders have their own things working for them outside there, and here in Africa is just where they come to die. Do you know how cemetery looks like? We don't have a development in cemeteries. No, it's just there. I think what Putin said was the truth. And people should learn from that. This is EFK original documentaries. We don't have much to say, but to show our anger and to show our dissatisfaction with what the president has said. We have the right to speak. We have the right to our own opinion. This is my opinion I am sharing. The president has become a puppet. And now the puppet master wants his taxes. And now the president, who is the puppet, is coming to the ground to suck dry the Africans. The Africans should not allow this.